They called Fort Polk the Army's answer to Paris Island, and they also called it the second worst place on earth.
You went through a portal, the door closed, and life as you knew it was gone.
It was unrelenting, physical in a way that I had never experienced before.
My first impression of Fort Polk was I arrived there and got off the plane and thought I was in hell.
You thought things were bad enough, and then suddenly it got worse.
The recruiting sergeant said, "Have you ever been in jail?" And I said, "Not until now." And he said, "This isn't jail, son, it's just a little obligation."
I had read an article that said that people who were trained at Fort Polk had the highest rate of return from Vietnam with the least amount of wounded and dead.
Tigerland had quite a bad reputation as being very strict.
Their training was excellent because after Fort Polk, Vietnam was a picnic.
I was drafted December 14th, 1967.
I was 24 when I was drafted. I was going to school and was transferring to a 4-year school, and they lost my paperwork and I lost my classification, and then I was drafted.
All I could think of was that how long the involvement was going to be, what it was going to entail. It was a kind of unbelievable moment.
Most of the guys I served with were taken right out of high school. They came from small towns.
Later, when we flew down to Fort Polk, you fly into New Orleans. You go by commercial airliner to New Orleans. There's a place where you switch over to the military terminal, which takes you to the base itself, to the airfield. And I was in such a state of anxiety that I actually went over and priced tickets to Canada.
I decided that if I was meant to live, I would live. So I went in.
We called it Fort Puke, Louisiana.
You come in over what looks to be a kind of terrain that no human being has ever trod upon. It looked from the window of the plane like just a virtual, bayou jungle country.
The Army doesn't tell you anything. They just send you in and give you orders as you go.
And I honestly thought, oh my God, where are they taking me?
We came into an airstrip on the base and got on a bus, so we didn't even know where we were. You were disoriented. The buildings to me looked old. The racks were metal with a mattress on it. I've been in prisons and it was not as nice as a prison.
When you sat in the latrine, which is just a line of toilets without any kind of barriers, the roaches would just crawl across your feet.
I had no idea what was in store for me. I had no idea what the training involved. It was hot and humid, and you can cut the air with a knife.
And they took us somewhere. We had no idea where we were, and people were yelling at you all the time.
It was quite a change. It was just a miserable time.
The training officers were extremely hard on us.
There was an attitude almost of hatred toward the recruits, I think, to inculcate in you this feeling that what was out there was not your friend.
There were two parts of the fort: North Fort, which was this mysterious place where you went for AIT, and South Fort, where we were for basic training.
Everybody seemed equally on the verge of cracking up the first couple of days.
I happened to have a very good sergeant he would really be on us while we were doing any of the exercises, but afterwards he was human.
And as I recall, it started out with marching. That was the first maybe 2 weeks of basic training.
Fort Polk at that time was in a kind of an experiment, was undergoing constant change, training that was generations old. We were adapting it, constantly adjusting, adapting it to what we knew as real combat. As the war was changing in Vietnam, we got more knowledge. And in the 5 or 6 months that I was at Peace on Ridge or up at Fort Polk, I saw our tactics grow. We knew that we were involved in something special, something unique, and something that was in a state of flux.
Basic training was conducted in the summertime, which is when we were down there, in heat that was easily above 100 degrees almost every day. The first day you were in basic training, when they taught you to put together your web gear, I remember they shove the entrenching tool, "What's this?" And the guy would answer, "It's a shovel." Scream at him, "No, it's not," make him do push-ups. "It's an entrenching tool." "No, it's, what is it?" "It's a weapon." And they would then show you to jab it into somebody's throat and hit him across the head with it. That web gear you wrapped around your fist. Everything was to be considered a weapon.
We did a lot of calisthenics, we did a lot of running, marching, usual Army garbage.
You were diminished. You were told when to get up, when to sit down, when to eat, when you went to bed, when you could write a letter to home. Everything was controlled. You couldn't make any decisions. It was totally different, and you basically became a whole different person.
Brutal in a sense of the way they treated you. There was physical contact.
There was definitely harassment of some of the black soldiers because a lot of the drill sergeants were Southerners. There was also discrimination against me, mainly because I was from New York. Southern drill sergeants didn't like any Northerners, but a New Yorker in particular was on their radar, and I got many extra duties because of it.
I think we got up at 4:30 or 5 a.m. and somebody would come yelling through the barracks, banging on every rack. That's how we woke up every morning.
In the films, you often see a sergeant screaming at a recruit. In reality, it's usually 3 or 4 of them walking around screaming. You are never called a soldier. You are, at the best, they call you a trainee. Mostly they call you, asshole, shitbird. They call you mostly foul names.
Trying to break you from civilian habits into military habits, such as working together a lot more than you normally would in civilian life.
You come out of basic and you're shipped out to advanced infantry training, and all of a sudden somebody says, "You, soldier, come here," and you feel like, wow, I really have found a place for myself. Until I think for most of us, you started to wonder, what that was all about.
When I finished basic training at South Fort, I was put on a truck and hauled to North Fort for AIT.
Advanced infantry training, which is where they had Tigerland.
I was conscious of a place called Tigerland, but we never called it Tigerland. We called it Fort Puke. And it was a different place. It was worse.
These young men came out of basic training. They knew how to make a left turn, a right face, and a left face, and how to salute and that kind of stuff. They knew how to shoot a rifle. They had no idea what real combat was going to be like. Just no way to describe it. And we had to change AIT from what I experienced to one that most closely resembled a combat situation. I was 19 years old in Vietnam, and was leading men into combat as a squad leader at 20 years of age. It gave me a sense of responsibility that was, it still makes the hair stand up on my neck when I think about some of the incidents that made me realize I no longer was an individual. I was no longer responsible just for my life. I was responsible for giving orders, and that could cost the lives of other people.
Tigerland was a section of the nearby forest area that they had turned into a mock Vietnam. They had a village, there were cows running around, they had swamps.
Today they take mock training, mock villages for granted. But in those days they didn't.
There was a sign above it saying, "Welcome to Tigerland," as you came through it, and it was the graduation exercise for advanced infantry training, where you were supposed to put everything you had learned into practice. And it was conducted as if you were actually in the field. Most of what we did was live fire.
It was the worst place that I've ever been in my life.
I served for 1 year in Vietnam. And when I came back to the States and was at Tigerland, my job was to teach outside of the manual as well as what was in the manual. The type of training that we did there, it was scripted in one way, but because of veterans like myself who had just come back from Vietnam, we were breaking the script and changing the script in place all the time.
That was where the last week of training was conducted as a week-long war game.
I was certainly aware of what was going on and what I could learn. That time it becomes serious.
They trained us in all kinds of different weapons.
Weapons other than the M16, the 45, M60 machine gun, grenade launchers, hand grenades, things like that.
We'd be shooting them and then have to break them down, clean them, put them back together.
You were allowed only about an hour of sleep for the most part. If your lines were successfully probed by the other side, they would take you out in the middle of the night and march you 5 miles. They tried to make it as painful and as realistic as possible.
Training in, how to react in the jungle, how to attack, and how to stay alive.
Some of your major fighting in Vietnam would take place at night. And we need to be able to use some of the same tactics that the VC used so successfully. And that required a lot of night activity. And so Peace on Ridge, during the daytime you received lectures. As soon as it got dark, you were out on operations. That's where the major training took place.
I remember at one point they took us out on a patrol, and we were walking along, and I heard a crack in the bushes and turned around and opened fire. Everybody followed me and opened fire. They yelled, "Ceasefire." It turned out people were actually in there. And the sergeant came over to me and he said, "Did you actually hear something, or did you just hear a sound and open fire?" And I said, "Frankly, Sergeant, I just heard a sound and started shooting." And he said, "Congratulations, son, now you know what it's like." There were a number of people that I saw while I was there who cracked up. You have to remember, you're in a world whose primary purpose is death and killing. There was a fellow who tried to hang himself. The mental state of people deteriorated pretty quickly.
One of our last exercises, there was a fake Vietnamese village, and we had to assault and take that.
Well, Peace on Ridge was a tactical area at Fort Polk that was set up like a mock Viet Cong village. And that was one of the things that was different from training at Tigerland than it was at Fort Polk, Louisiana, or Fort Lewis.
They had these huts set up in this heavy wooded area, and you would have to approach it as quietly as possible. They would simulate that it was a Viet Cong village and you were attacking it.
It was all about real combat, not just classic textbook Army manual stuff.
It was a little spooky, and it was showing you what was to come.
I think the main purpose of that kind of military training is to teach you how to kill people, that other people are really going to be trying to kill you, and that you have to follow orders, even it might mean you're going to die in the process. Also, that unit cohesion is more important than anything else. This is beaten into you by the sergeants, sometimes literally.
What we did there It's keeping American men alive today. You know, in Vietnam, it was nothing for us. I mean, a 7.5 hour period, we lost 58 men in a battle when we were ambushed by a reinforced regiment of North Vietnamese. Today, if they lose 58 people in a month, everybody goes crazy.
There were things that went on at Polk where you felt like you really could get badly hurt.
Towards the end of that training, we did these live fire exercises where they were actually firing machine guns.
There were numerous incidents where live fire went awry and hit nearby. I saw people hit with ricochets. We went off course one time on a live fire exercise where machine gun bullets were quite close to us.
Cover and run, and like two guys would move up and the guys behind them would shoot over the top of them while they moved forward.
This kind of thing was not completely, unknown, and I think that they were, in those days, I don't know what it's like now, I've heard it's a lot different, but I think that they were running people through this and trying to get them over to the war and trying to, it was almost like being caught in a large machine.
They learned what the risk was, and Peace on Ridge and Tigerland helped them to make the adjustment, that change in your mind that needs to be adjusted. They weren't always happy with it, but that there was a lesson. Everything was done was a teaching opportunity. It was under those conditions that you finally could get them to break and let go of their comfort zone and say, this is how you stay alive. This is how you do it.
Everything in those days, it seemed to me, was luck. You were really, really paying attention to see if you could get any kind of glean any information about what might happen to you.
I guess that being in Vietnam changed my life.
Nothing can train you for Vietnam. It was more suffering the same thing that brought you closer together in Vietnam, with the threat of death hanging over you all the time.
When I got back from Vietnam, it was a really bad time. We were not appreciated at all. People were afraid of us. We were called baby killers. It wasn't a good feeling coming back.
No one was interested in anything that you'd done.
There was no decompression training, so one day you're in the jungle and the next day you're on the streets.
One of the guys I was in college with, his name was John Bradford. All he wanted to do was grow up to be a football coach. And he was drafted and was killed within 2 or 3 weeks. I still haven't gone to the monument to see Johnny's name on it because I don't think I could handle it. To me, it was just an incredible waste of money, and worse than that, it was a waste of lives, theirs and ours.
I think that the military experience, although not necessarily immediately, because sometimes it takes a while to digest what happened to you, I think there's certain things that you walk away from it with. One of them is the extent to which everybody is really alike. I think the other thing you learn is that the guy on the right side and the left side of you are a lot braver than you are, and they're thinking the same thing.
I'm sitting there looking at these 60 men that I'm responsible for training, and I've got to give them the best. I wanted every one of them to come back alive. I took that very personally, but I knew they all wouldn't come back alive. What we were involved in involved life and death, and what we poured into people could make a difference in whether they came back from the war alive or not.
When you started, you didn't know if you could do it. After you finished it, you felt like, and you always feel like, you did something that not everybody else has done. I didn't like doing it or didn't choose to do it, but it makes you a better person.
You were in absolute misery most of the time, and the only thing you had were your buddies that were next to you. The people that I have been able to recontact with after Vietnam that were in my platoon, they're my best friends, even 42 years later.
We weren't thrilled to be there. Nobody wanted to be there. But I was very proud of everybody that I served with.
The men that I trained got the best I could give them. I never held anything back. I'd get letters from them, and there's something inside of me would always want to stand at attention when I read those letters and salute them, these young privates who let me have a part of their life. And that's what Tigerland and Peace on Ridge did.
Their training, as it turned out, was very good. I came back without a scratch. I don't know if that was from their training or luck or a combination of both, but I'm here doing the interview.